Whoever wrote Go West, Young Man was obviously an MLS fan because the Western Conference is starting to heat up.
Well, Greg, maybe lukewarm because no team in the West is playing over 500.
No, they're not, but they got some wins this weekend, and Chivas showing the way that the West could be won next on Extra Time. Welcome to Extra Time, everybody. Alongside Shep Messing, I'm Greg Lawless. I don't know what it was, but last week was a strikers' party. Brian Ching, Connor Casey, and Kenny Cooper each had a goal. They came in the same week that the U.S. national team struggled up top against England. Shep, coincidence?
Greg, I don't think so. If you watch Josh Wolf and Eddie Johnson, you know that Bob Bradley is surveying Major League Soccer, looking to see who could step up to the U.S. national team.
Still looking for a replacement for Brian McBride. But in MLS, lines are being drawn, old scores settled, and the cream is rising to the top. We're a third of the way through the MLS season, which, although a tad arbitrary, is a good enough milestone for us here at ET. So this week, we'll try to answer some of the questions that have come up so far. Is Toronto for real? Can LA hang throughout the whole season? Later on, we'll talk with DC United striker Santino Quaranta. The great Santino is making a comeback, a little resurrection. But we'll start with what has to be the most unexpected game of the week featured on ET this year, Real Salt Lake's 3-1 win over San Jose.
And why is that our game of the week? In the Salt Lake Tribune, they're saying, is Real Salt Lake the worst team in Major League Soccer? And I'll tell you, Greg, that is unbelievable pressure to put on that team playing at home, almost a must-win situation.
Well, the hometown paper calling you out, but it worked. The rumors of RSL's demise were highly exaggerated. Still, Salt Lake had a PK saved by Joe Cannon very early on in the game, and Coach Jason Kreis called his team terrible, quote, terrible, in the first half.
Greg, you know as a former player, the most devastating thing from a psychological component is you're playing at home, you get an early penalty kick, and Joe Cannon makes a great save. I thought Salt Lake was deflated for the rest of the first half.
Well, certainly, but what a difference 15 minutes can make. Real Salt Lake came out of the locker room flying. Kreis, he skipped the Dr. Phil routine and went straight for the Bluto and Animal House pep talk. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
No.
No. So, Real Salt Lake stormed out of the locker room and went up 3-0 right after the second half started, mainly through Robbie Finley.
Greg, I'll tell you what I like about the Real Salt Lake team, Jason Kreis. Every coach wants his team to take on his character. Jason Kreis, as a player, he fought hard for 90 minutes. He chased down every loose ball, and he's really assembled a team right now that plays the way he used to play.
And they're his players. 12 of the 14 players used in the game, Shep, were brought in by Kreis. The centerpiece on this day was Javier Morales. This guy might be the most dangerous player in MLS that no one has ever heard of. He's clever, he's creative, and he's got a bit of a nasty streak. He scored a lovely goal set up by Finley. And I think he's one of the major reasons why I'm going to stick with my prediction that Real Salt Lake will still come in second in the West this year.
Make sure everybody knows that's Greg Lawless. That's his prediction. Greg, to do that, they've been unbeaten at home, but they better start winning a lot of games on the road.
Well, maybe they can play San Jose every week. San Jose still struggling in the Western Conference. Every team in the league has played about 10 games apiece, which means we're through the first third. And that seems like a perfectly good time to ask some questions about what's happened so far. And Shep, let's start in the East. Toronto is currently in fourth place. They're undefeated at home, and considering their dismal maiden season last year, they've got to be the story of the year in 2008. Now, if the playoffs started today, they'd make it easily. But are they a playoff team come October?
Greg, I'd make the argument that they are, and I'll tell you why. Because in the midfield, they have Carl Robinson, Adu, two great ball winners. They have Robert, elegant when he's serving balls in. They have Ricketts, who gives them speed and width in the midfield. And they have Amado Guevara, the consummate playmaker, the catalyst getting forward.
And this past weekend, we saw some depth in the defense when Julius James came in and even got a goal in his MLS debut. Now, Columbus, another team that's had a nice start to things. They're third in the East, and they had a 6-game unbeaten streak earlier, but they've now lost 2 games in a row. Can they avoid their usual late-season slide out there in Ohio?
Well, Greg, they've gone 3 games in a row without scoring a goal, so you know they're in trouble. I'd make the argument that for Columbus, it's all on the shoulders of Schelotto. We questioned whether he could be 100% motivated, fit for the entire grueling Major League Soccer season. They're going to need him to do that if they're going to succeed.
And teams have also figured out maybe how to slow down Robbie Rogers and striker Alejandro Moreno, who started off very well. Now, speaking of strikers, some of MLS's biggest strikers have started the season colder than an angry girlfriend. Luciano Emilio and Juan Pablo Angel come to mind. Last year, they had 39 goals combined. This year, they have 4 total. In short, the league's defenders have figured them out. And, this is what separates good strikers from great ones. The great ones figure out a way to score even after they've been solved.
I'd make the argument that they're both great strikers. They'll find their way. Juan Pablo Angel, I can tell you, is really playing injured. He's stoically trying to play through it. He also is not playing with a Jozy Altidore as a real good complementary player. Jozy Altidore is struggling. That hurts Juan Pablo Angel as well.
And Emilio came into the season with some contract issues and out of shape, and he started to figure it out recently. He's got a couple of goals, figuring out how to play with Marcelo Gallardo and again with Moreno. So things seem to be pretty good right now for them. Now, some other teams that are starting to figure things out, Chivas and Houston. Last year, they were 1-2 in the West. They both started this season poorly, but they've recently found some rich vein of form. They're right now tied for second in the West with Los Angeles. Are they for real? Are they back?
Well, I'm going to start with Chivas, and I've always liked this team. They've gotten healthy. Preki has adjusted with Guzan in goal and Ante Razov up top.
Fun to watch.
One of the most beautiful teams to watch going forward.
Certainly. Now, Houston, on the other hand, they've always sort of been more of a fight through it, and now that Brian Ching is sort of rounding into form. This past weekend, he had a nice goal and blood streaming off his head and looking good and starting to get some of their guys back from injury. I think that makes a huge difference. And Dominic Kinnear, obviously, one of the best brains in soccer in MLS right now. So Houston coming around. Also in the West, though, Los Angeles not coming around. They had a disaster up in Toronto. I have no idea what Ruud Gullit was doing with his lineup. No Beckham, fine, he's on international duty. Landon was supposedly hurt, but he was available and he flew home. Carlos Ruiz left on the bench. I don't care if this game was on turf. The little fish needed to be out there from minute 1, I think. Right now, I have to question whether there's any confidence in LA. Do you have the confidence that this Los Angeles team can challenge for the Western Conference or even make the playoffs?
Zero. I have zero. And I'll tell you, let me support Landon Donovan, because oftentimes I go the other way. What in the world is Ruud Gullit thinking? Here's Landon Donovan, flies over to England, hops on a plane, flies back, was healthy enough, trained, and he doesn't get in the game. If I'm Landon, I'm very upset. Without Landon Donovan, David Beckham, and Carlos Ruiz, that team has nothing.
Well, they're pretty mediocre without those 3. And right now, the LA Brass is reportedly demanding the whole enchilada this year. That's a lot of pressure, and for Ruud, he better understand that a few wins doesn't mean much in a league that seems to turn upside down every few weeks. DC United wear black, but they've been darker than usual this year. They're still languishing in the Eastern Cellar, but one of the brightest spots so far is striker Santino Quaranta. Just a year ago, he seemed like a lost cause to MLS, but he's been resurrected in the capital, scoring 2 goals and 2 assists so far. And we're joined now by Santino. Welcome to ET, Santino.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, United was struggling early on. What do you attribute the difficulties?
I think it's a new team. We have a lot of new guys. I think that now we're working. We needed to have 11 guys working. The talent's always been there, I think, but now it's we're all coming together a little bit, and we understand each other's roles a little bit better now. But we struggled in the beginning, obviously, with chemistry and a lot of things.
And what about in the locker room, Santino? There was a lot of pressure over the last couple of weeks on Tommy especially and on the team not getting results. Was there any question in the locker room about how it was going?
Well, as a player, it's tough to lose, and losing is not fun, obviously, in the locker room. But it was a lot of pressure, especially on Tommy, and he's the hardest working coach I've ever played for, and I really, it's not Tommy's fault. It was just the way the cards were falling, and so it was a lot of pressure on us as well to get a result. The leaders on the team, Ben Olsen and Jaime, and they pull the guys together, and they've done a great job in that sense, and everybody still works for each other, so that's a good sign.
Talk about the integration of the other talented players up front for you guys. You have Fred, you have Emilio, you have Jaime Moreno. You're back on the field playing well. Is Gallardo the catalyst, and you guys are all moving off him?
As a number 10, he orchestrates everything. Our attack, as we play more and more each game, you can see glimpses of brilliance. I think that last game in New England, we should have finished that game off at by halftime, and just the work and the effort. It's been better each game we've played as of late, and I think if the effort's there, then the talent and the goals and everything will come.
Well, Santino, you have a big game this weekend. You're going out to Chicago. Chicago, arguably the best team in MLS so far this year. How do you see this one coming down?
Well, on the road it's tough, and Chicago's been great. They've had our number, to be honest with you, for a long time. So we're just trying to figure out, to go in with a good attitude and expect to win. I think that if you go in, expecting a draw or just getting out with a point, bad things happen. So we're expecting to win games now, and so it's going to be a good test for us.
Well, you're starting to look much better, and Santino, thank you for joining us here on ET.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks a lot.
You can catch the whole interview with Santino Quaranta on MLSnet.com. Santino and DC United have a lot of work to do still, but they've got a little momentum from the last two games, and if history is any indication, only a fool would write off DC United. It's been a busy week for the postal workers at ET. Our mailbox is bulging, and we'll start with a question from Matt in Warren, Ohio, who wonders what we think about the Columbus fan situation. Here's a Reader's Digest version. Some fan troubles at Crew Stadium 2 weeks ago at a game between Columbus and New England. The fans were throwing streamers, and that started them starting to throw smoke bombs, coins, bottles. Someone even threw a bratwurst. What's going on out there? What do you think?
Well, Greg, a serious issue, some allegations about racial abuse, and certainly unacceptable. Having said that, it's not all Columbus Crew fans. I give credit to the supporters groups out there, the Crew Union, the other supporter groups coming together, trying to help the league and the Columbus Crew front office identify those guilty to punish them. I think, the reality is if you allow anything to be thrown on the field, it starts with a streamer, it's hard to prevent the rest from coming on the field.
It's a slippery slope. But right now the league is starting an investigation. They're talking to the team to try and figure out what happens. In my opinion, there has to be a fine, and there has to be talk about the next time points being docked by a team that has some fan trouble. Now, John in Whereabouts Unknown asks, what teams not in the top 4 in each conference right now do you see ending up in the playoffs? Well, don't forget that it's not necessarily the top 4 in each conference that make the playoffs. It's the top 3 plus the next best 2 regardless of conference. So for me, the one team not in the promised land right now that will make it eventually is, of course, Real Salt Lake. They have all the parts, but so far just haven't been able to get the engine going the way it should. A win against San Jose always helps.
Well, Greg, you're the eternal opposite. I'm going to go the other way. I think they're going to stay about where they are.
Well, there are a lot of questions coming in surrounding Brian McBride and Carlos Bocanegra, and we'll get to those next week. Are they going to come back? Are they not going to come back? Who knows? In the meantime, though, keep the emails coming. The address is extratime@mlsnet.com. We'll get to them ASAP, but first, we have to get to Shep's Wow Moment of the Week.
And it's Chivas, home to Columbus. Chivas gets the ball out wide right, drills it into the box. Frankie Haydock with the back heel, and at the back post, Jorge Flores takes it out of the midair, full volley, left foot. Wow, that's a great goal.
The 18-year-old has 3 goals in 3 games and looks fantastic. Certainly wow-worthy. That's all the time we have for you this week on Extra Time, but Shep and I will be here next week and we'll kick it around.